Well, a need taken to excess is disastrous. For instance, you need to eat. Done well, you're eating something that brings health, both body and mind, spirit, and happiness, joy. And done to excess brings overweight and death. There's creativity, which done correctly creates structures and patterns of life that are very helpful to living and very satisfying. And done to excess is obsession and excludes the other things that should be in life. As finance, sufficient money is what's necessary, for, to maintain life and general well-being. Done to excess is grasping and selfish and results in desperate loneliness. There's power, ability, control, such that you can control your environment around you, again to bring fullness of life. And done to excess is authoritarian tyranny, self-importance, and fierce collision and antagonism with those that have more power or similar amounts of power. There's wisdom and understanding, which is sufficient to make the life around you that you're leading optimal. And there's obsession with revelation, knowing all things, intellectualism, there's a spirituality which is such that you lead life caring and supporting and maintaining those around you, fitting harmoniously where you are. And there's an extreme spirituality which is actually the epitome of selfishness, self-aggrandizement, great spiritual powers, and the exercise of them to an excess way beyond your wisdom, and actually not optimal, causing chaos. And so with each of the needs that we have met correctly, they satisfy the needs of life, promoting well-being, happiness, joy, peace. And done to excess, destroy life, both one's own and the lives around us and beyond. And for instance, some conformity in society is very helpful. 100% conformity is the death of society. Society needs new things, new approaches, variety, change. It can't exist without a degree of conformity, and it can't exist without a degree of non-conformity. It just dies if it doesn't have some non-conformity. If it has too much non-conformity, you've got chaos and no society, of course. It just disintegrates. We have a need to be appreciated, valued, to feel part of the whole and other people's lives. Too much appreciation is worship, to be put on a pedestal, treated as a god, if you like, without the true ability to be one. Disastrous. We're corrupted quickly by such. We become authoritarian, elitist, unloving. We have physical, sexual needs. Exercised modestly is life itself. We have children and we look after them. Exercise to excess. We don't look after the children, nor the partners. We just, rape our way through life. That's disastrous for everybody concerned. Simplistically, we have a need for warmth too much, and, well, it's too hot, isn't it? It's extremely uncomfortable. We have a need for fresh air. Too much makes us hyperventilate. Body gets unstable. So, absence of a need being met is a great distress, and an excess of a need being met is also a great distress. Too little company is loneliness, isolation, and suicidal. Too much company is a crowd that is way beyond our interactive control, and we're crushed to death. A modest garden is nice to walk in, grow a few plants, place to sit. An immense estate is a headache and utter loneliness. A car that moves, well, it's very useful. One that goes too fast can kill you. A few good books are a great blessing. A library is a great burden. A few nice clothes, well, that's just fine. A vast wardrobe, just a burden. Some quiet and peace and meditation is a great blessing. Endless quiet, peace and meditation is a slow death. Endless busyness and activity is exhaustion. Nothing new here, is there? A need met is a blessing. A need met to great excess is great cost. We need water for life. Too much water and we drown. We need technology to be comfortable. Too much technology, and we're in such an artificial environment, we can't live with it. Understanding of the things that really matter to us is a great blessing. Understanding of everything in the universe. There's just an IT problem as to what to put our mind to best advantage. We have a prioritization problem that's absorbing all our resources. A bit like my mum, who would spend ages planning the day in her diary, and then the next morning replanning all the things she didn't manage to do yesterday into the next planned day. We end up spending all our life planning and optimizing strategy, hunting rather than living. We become detached from the reality of that which is actually important to us in our locality and place. So we need to do each thing optimally, not to excess. The epitome of failure is the perfectionist, who does any one thing or any one or two things, but possibly only one thing by definition, to the extreme of perfection, using all his resources and perfecting it out of all proportion to the needs of the rest of life, his own and that around him. A perfectionist is the epitome of failure to understand living in a scarce resource world, living in a situation where the reality is you are not God. God has the ability and resources to do all things perfectly. We do not, which means we cannot do any one thing perfectly without being at great cost of other things. That great cost resulting in failure, unhappiness, distress, and death. So, the crime of excess is that it destroys life, and perfection is the epitome of improving something to excess, a narrow vision of what's important, that the completeness of this particular activity or dimension is important to the extent that you don't allocate time and resources to all your other needs. You don't allocate correctly. Simply a misallocation. So I might have an extremely tidy, immaculate house and not have attended to really the care of my family or job or garden even, say, or care of the neighbours next door, or my spiritual life, etc., etc. Well, this gives us understanding then of how to address the first commandment, if you like, to love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. It's valid only in your comprehension, the degree to which you realize satisfactorily the definition of God. If your God includes, in its definition, the love and care of all creation, and a competence to achieve such, then to worship and to love such with all your heart, soul, mind and strength now embraces the needs of creation, of course from the perspective of God, not yourself, but it is your perspective of God's perspective of all things, and is contained, governed accordingly. And we might take what we see as reasonable steps to make sure that our view of God is adequate, that we're not chasing after some very imperfect understanding of God. That we're not living according to a very imperfect understanding of God, rather. That would be sad. On the other hand, if we spend all our life simply getting the right perspective of God, but not then living, not then allocating resources and time and effort to live according to this, then of course we've done something to excess again, haven't we? And that would be disastrous. A bit like the world casually says, well, you spend all your time in prayer, what on earthly good is that to anyone else? And to some extent you see that is true, isn't it? I mean, it's important, very important, to have a right concern for your understanding of God. But to devote all your life to this understanding and not to the love and care of those around you in practice, helping and blessing and listening to and, suggesting ways they might solve the problems that they want solved and so on, and that's causing them trouble. If you don't spend it in a concern to actually carry out the consequences of understanding, your understanding of God, what it implies you should be doing in life, if you don't do that, then, again, you've met one of your needs, namely to understand who God is, to an excess. That might be a mystic, but it's not a saint. A saint somehow combines their, what we might understand to be a fairly mature, reasonable understanding of God, combines that with living accordingly. What we might assume implies caring appropriately for the world in which they're still in. We are in this world, and the world has all sorts of needs which most people's understanding of God implies that they should be and are concerned with such needs around them. In other words, quite simply, we're not just concerned with developing our own spiritual life, but the lives of those around us sufficient to live life more harmoniously and happily and joyfully, and to bring peace and blessing to those around us. If our obsession with understanding God and worshipping Him excludes carrying out the consequence of reasonable understanding of God, then, it's a disaster. So, maturely, truly successful life is one that, broadly speaking, allocates time and resources optimally across all the needs And those needs, that list of needs certainly embraces those around us. Now, if we try to meet the needs of the universe, of course, we do not have the resources to make any impression upon it at all. We might make some impression on our own world, some amazing invention, or some amazing insight of wisdom that is a blessing to all mankind. But such things are rather rare and, in a sense, not required of us. I mean, because we are not actually here to change the universe. God is actually working on us, not the universe. He can change the universe yesterday if he wants. What he's doing here in our lives, your life and mine, is making each of us something wonderful. Bringing up us as children, we are being taught. And you could say that is his priority with all that he cares for in the creation as we see it, as we experience it. And it is, in a sense, him that's doing it, not us, although he may well exercise rather our creativity in teaching us. So we are, if you like, helping him weed the flower bed. We're helping him doing the washing up, helping mum or dad or whatever. We're experiencing being creative as he is creative, and loving and caring as he loves and cares. And it's part of our training. But it's not really because the weeding needs being done or the washing up. Mum and Dad are able to do that without our help. We are only helping because it's part of our teaching. Teaching to us, for us, for our benefit. He does a greater thing in us than through us. The things he does through us, he could do through anyone or directly himself. I don't mean that makes our effort worthless. On the contrary, he's allowing us and having us do certain things because they're such a blessing to us. And he may use it to be an even greater blessing to who we're serving, because they can perhaps delight in, their children, loving and caring for them and helping and responding in gratitude to parents and so on. I think you get the general drift anyway. Thank you, Heavenly Father. Do you see how the concept, the understanding, the living according to God being our Father and we being his children so easily gets things in perspective that we really don't go too far astray. I mean, perhaps you could carry out this principle too much to some extreme. It's the best, most serviceable principle. It seems to be in application in our experience in the material world. If we see our relationship with God as he, the wonderful parent, lovely parent, and us, who's loved, her loved, the parents loved the child, God's child. We are children of God. Well, I tend to emphasize emphasize he is our father. You might emphasize he's our mother. You might emphasize he's both in one. I don't know. Thank you, and